Hi guys, Sherlock's Apprentice here again, aka Mike. So this is a follow-on video from my last one of the Bible Decode, My Bible Decode. And as I said in that one, my next investigation was to be into Moses and the Exodus from Egypt. Now, before I get started, I'd just like to explain, I've changed the format slightly of doing these videos where I'm actually narrating as opposed to the watchers being able to just read with a nice background music. And that's basically because someone requested that I narrate so that if they were in a car or something like that, that they were not able to watch the video, but would like to be able to listen to the video. So I don't really like the sound of my own voice, but I'm gonna try this way and get your feedback if it works or not. So here we go. Now this I started I started this investigation back in August 2023, and I really didn't think it was going to take this long, and I was going to go into this much depth. But so because it is quite a long investigation, I've decided to divide it into 5 separate videos. Um, and I hope each video will actually have a lot of content for you to get your teeth into, guys. And I hope you enjoy it. As always, let me start with a disclaimer. It's very important I state from the beginning that I am no biblical scholar, and the information I'm about to present in the series of presentations is just my personal observations and hypothesis. In no way am I trying to question anyone's beliefs or faiths in the scriptures or any of the religions. I know there are countless biblical scholars who know the history and Bible far better than I ever could. I am just pointing out findings that I thought were interesting and maybe show possible alternative translations and meanings to the scriptures. I was brought up as a Roman Catholic and as a Christian. I truly believe in the Almighty Creator. Although I no longer see myself as a Roman Catholic, my connection with the Almighty has never been stronger than it is now since discovering the truth of where we live. Since then, I have tried to discover who is really running, controlling this world. To do that, I found myself going back to the Bible. So following on from my last video, Who is Yahweh? There was another story that really didn't make sense to me, and that was Moses and the Exodus from Egypt. So I've investigated the scriptures and come up with an alternative opinion to the facts of this story. I hope you find it interesting. Remember, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. I'm going to start with my conclusion. I believe Yahweh in the Bible is sometimes the devil cunningly portraying himself as our creator. He was possibly our creator's first son, or maybe even the twin of Jesus, who knows, and was thrown out of heaven along with a third of the angels. They were cast to Mount Hermon, see the book of Enoch, on the Israel-Syria border, which is also called Mount Zion, or Mount Zion, Mount Lebanon, which means the White Mountain, Mount Sinai, or the Lord's Mountain. There may be even more names for this infamous mountain. I believe this is the mountain Moses spoke to Yahweh and commanded him to go to Egypt. The Pharaoh Ramesses built the Egyptian capital city, Pi-Ramesses, in Palestine, Israel, and not the Nile Delta in today's Egypt. And that's Ramesses II. The crossing of the Red Sea was really the Reed Sea, which is the Sea of Galilee, not the Red Sea that we know today. Sea of Galilee, historically called the Sea of Kinnereth. So, the deception. The first deception, I believe, is where was Egypt around the time of 1400 BC to 1200 BC, which is given as the approximate time of the Exodus. Egypt's empire was not where it is today. And the assumption when calculating the route of the Exodus assumes the map of Egypt today. Here is the Egyptian empire at around that time. As you can see, Egypt had conquered Sinai, Palestine, or Israel today, Lebanon into Syria in the north, Sudan to the south, and Libya to the west. This is why the Hebrew Israelites were captured and made slaves to build their Egyptian cities. According to the historical reports, the Egyptians were expanding their empire north into Syria. Therefore, the Hebrews in Canaan had already been captured and conquered and put to slavery. In the Bible, it mentions that Moses and the Hebrews left the new capital city of Pi-Ramesses, which was built by Ramesses II using Hebrew slaves. Ramesses was at war with the Hittites and continuing his empire north, Syria. He built the new capital of Pi-Ramesses as a supply station for chariots, swords, and weapons for their battles in Syria and to the north. One of those famous battles was the Battle of Kadesh. The historians state they discovered Pi-Ramesses, the new capital city, which means House of Ramesses, in the Nile Delta. This narrative fits nicely with the Exodus story and the crossing of the Red Sea. The problem here is, if your empire is in the north and you wish to expand north, surely you would build a new city factory near to the battles to provide supplies quickly. I believe the ancient city of Pi-Ramesses isn't where the archaeologists say it is. The legendary capital of Pharaoh Ramesses II. So, the House of Ramesses, or Great of Victories, capital city of Egypt. So this is where the historians say the Pi-Ramesses, they believe, was at that time. So it was the capital city, constructed in the 13th century and abandoned in approximately 1060 BC. It appears that Pharaoh Seti had a summer palace very near the location, which his son, Pharaoh Ramesses II, would later build its own capital city. The young crown prince would have lived in his father's summer palace and would have encouraged to explore enough of the area to have known future location for his capital for Pi-Ramesses, where they believe is a town called Qantir in the east Delta region, and is found near the capital Avaris. Pi-Ramesses of the 19th dynasty in the New Kingdom period. Why was it built? Here's the important part. Pharaoh seemed to have moved the capital city here for political and defensive reasons, as it was located in the Nile Delta, so closer to political allies and enemy territory. Pharaoh Ramesses II's greatest battle was launched from Pi-Ramesses, the Battle of Kadesh. So according to Wikipedia, Pi-Ramesses was believed to be in the Nile Delta, shown this yellow pin here. I think it's unlikely the Egyptians would have built their new capital in this location, as it was only 4 to 5 meters above sea level today. So these coordinates, Pi-Ramesses, House of Ramesses, and this is the mouth of the Nile Delta, which was always subject to flooding. So I won't read all this part, but the Battle of Kadesh. Okay, the Battle of Kadesh in its 5th regional year was a climatic engagement in a campaign that Ramesses fought in Syria against the resurgent Hittite forces of Muwatallis. The pharaoh wanted a victory in Kadesh, both to expand Egyptian frontiers in Syria and to emulate his father Seti's triumph entry into the city just a decade or so earlier. He also constructed the new capital, Pi-Ramesses. There he built factories to manufacture weapons, chariots, and shields, producing some 1,000 weapons in a week, about 250 chariots in 2 weeks, and 1,000 shields in a week and a half. After these preparations, Ramesses moved to attack the territory of Levant, which belonged to a more substantial enemy he'd ever faced in war, the Hittite army. So where is Kadesh? Well, there seems to be 2 locations of Kadesh, or Kadesh with a Q. The first is Kadesh in Syria, and where Wikipedia says the Battle of Kadesh took place between the Egyptians and the Hittites. We look here, you can see Kadesh in Syria was the site of the Battle of Kadesh between Hittite and the Egyptian empires in the 13th century BC. The second is Kadesh, with the E of Galilee, where today there is an archaeological site, Tel of Kadesh. If you look here, so this is the location of Kadesh, which is actually in north. There's the Tel of Kadesh, where they found archaeological site, and this was another place called Kadesh. There's the Sea of Galilee, and there's Kadesh just north of it. So by using Google Earth and the ruler tool, we can see Pi Ramesses in the Nile Delta to Kadesh in Galilee is about 280 miles as the crow flies, and would be over 300 miles by land. Okay, so this is the Sea of Galilee. This is where Kadesh would be, and I drew a line from where they say Pi Ramesses. Yes, 280 miles. Okay. But from Pi Ramesses Kadesh in Syria is even further, 390 miles. And this is where they said the Battle of Kadesh took place. And the capital city was built to supply army supplies nearly 400 miles away as the crow flies. So how quick could the Egyptian army march from Pi Ramesses here to either Kadesh in Syria or Kadesh in Kadesh in Palestine, Israel, or where they say the Battle of Kadesh is, in Syria? So using the Roman army as a benchmark of how fast armies can march without straight, smooth surface Roman roads, even with possible horses and chariots, the Roman army could march 20 to 30 miles per day. To reach Kadesh in Galilee from the Nile Delta would take 2 to 3 weeks, and 3 to 4 weeks Kadesh in Syria. Not ideal to resupply advancing Egyptian armies with weapons in an ongoing battle. So this is where I found the article. Vegetius claims Roman recruits should be trained to march 20 Roman miles, 30 kilometers a day in roughly 6 hours at an ordinary step. 24 miles at a full step. So many histories of a more or less popular character take this as a standard marching pace for Roman armies. And Stanford Orbis uses 30 kilometers as a typical military march and 60 kilometers as a rapid march. So yes, they could march for longer than 6 hours in a day, possibly even 12 hours, but still. I do not believe the city Pi Ramesses was in the Nile Delta. As a supply factory for battles in the north, its location was not practical. I believe it was built in Palestine, where Egypt had already conquered in the north and had enslaved Hebrew workers to build their new Egyptian cities in Palestine, first Pithom and then Pi Ramesses. I don't see the logic in moving hundreds of thousands of Hebrew workers to today's Egypt. I'm sure that would have been recorded somewhere. That's another Exodus, is it not? The second reason I believe Exodus took place in Palestine is the references in the Bible to the river Nile. In Exodus 2:3, Moses, as a baby, was laid in the reeds by the bank of the Nile, it says, Strong's 2975. So by translating the river name to the Nile, we are to believe the Exodus began in Egypt of today. So here, 2:3, for him, an ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with asphalt pitch, and put the child and laid it in the reeds by the bank of the Nile. So here, Hayor, the Ha-Yor, being Nile. But there are other references to the Nile in the Bible. In Genesis 15:18, Yahweh makes a covenant with Abraham, giving him the land from the river, Strong's 5104, of Egypt to the Euphrates River. So the word for river, remember Abraham's time, Egypt had not conquered Palestine, and therefore this reference is likely for the Nile River in the land of Egypt. So here we have Nahar, meaning river. Nahar River. Nahar River. Strong's 2975 is translated as Yor, meaning stream of the Nile or canal. Strong's 5104 is translated as Nahar, meaning a stream or river. So here's 2975. And here is the translation for the Nile. Stream, brackets, of the Nile. Okay. Nahar, stream or river. Okay. So you can see where these references are in Genesis 41 for Yor, and here for Nahar, Genesis 2, Genesis 15. Checking in Google Translate for Nahar, which is N-H-R, and it does translate as river or stream. You can see here, river. Here, current, river. Checking Google Translate for Yor, Y-A-R, translate as fire. Not stream or Nile of the canal. But strangely, when you check the dictionary section, there's no reference to fire, meaning Yah. So you see here, where did they get this meaning fire? I don't understand. Yeah, A, alpha, Vav, R. Yeah, the closest I can see there. But when you take the vowel points out of Yor, and you get the Yor without the vowel points, it becomes Yah, not Yor. Yah. No details found for Yah. The name in Hebrew for the river Jordan is the river Yarden. Here, Yarden. Okay. Y-R-D-N, the principal river in Palestine. Okay. So Yarden, Jordan is where it comes from. Looking at other references in the Bible, I can see the reference of Yor is possibly to the river Jordan and not the Nile. This would need further investigation in future videos. The river Jordan got its name from the Latin Jordanes. That's not Lord, which is interesting. It looks like Lord. It's Yor, that's an I. From two springs and rivers called Yor and Dan. But the city of Dan and the inheritance of Dan happened long after the Exodus. So I think the river Jordan was just called the river Yor or Yah. It was an Egyptian river as Egypt had conquered Palestine. So according to the biblical narrative, following the completion of the conquest of Canaan by the Israelite tribes, Joshua allocated the land among the 12 tribes of Dan. Okay, so we're saying that the Exodus was in 1300 BC, and this is after 1200 BC that the land of Dan was allocated. Here is the Sea of Galilee, Mare Galilee, Jordanis flow river here, and it comes from going up. The Yor flew here, and the Dan flew here, making the Jordan. So that's the first part of this Exodus, showing that I feel the original city of the Ramesses was not in Egypt of today, but actually somewhere in Palestine. We'll come to that on the next section, where I think that is. The mistranslation or the deceptive translation of the river Nile throughout the Bible is Yor, and then you have the river Jordan being a major river at that time. So I will show more of this in the next parts, but I hope you enjoyed part one of the Exodus, and I see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.